The conflict in Europe at the moment is a conflict between the hysterical religion of the left and the hysterical religion of Islam. These are two religions that are currently in combat with each other, and the reason that I know that leftism is a religion is that there is hysterically anti-fact as certain sections of the Catholic Church was in the early Middle Ages, where if you studied the sun-centered model of the solar system, right, you would be persecuted, it was wrong, it was heretical, and all this kind of stuff. That is how you know there's a religion, when people are pursuing important and relevant facts that are needed for people to make intelligent public policy decisions. People are studying facts. And they are persecuted and prosecuted for the pursuit of facts that are relevant, intensely relevant to some of the most pressing social issues of our time. Can't pursue facts, can't gather information, can't disseminate the truth, can't have an unbiased interpretation of reality or an unbiased examination or exploration of reality. So the left is as fascistic as they come.
I've always thought it was a scam, even before the rather sensational revelations of the recent days about the email traffic involving a small group of scientists who appeared to be basically conspiring to deny the evidence that the climate was getting colder rather than hotter. The fact that there was this email traffic between this small group of scientists doesn't itself prove there was a scam and a conspiracy and all the rest of it, because this was only, 4 or 5 scientists, although they were very prominent on the global warming agenda. But what's most interesting about this email traffic was that the reason for their concern was that they didn't know how to deal with the evidence, the scientific evidence, which was casting such terrible doubt on their whole theory. One of them said, for example, I have my own article on where the heck is global warming. The high in Boulder, Colorado, for the last 2 days was below 30 degrees Fahrenheit. We've broken records the past few days for the coldest days on record. The fact is that we can't account for the lack of warming at the moment, and it is a travesty that we can't. And what this email traffic said to me was that here you have a group of people, and this is the global warming agenda generally, for whom they know it's an unchallengeable fact that global warming is happening. And so when they see the evidence that it's not happening, the facts, the scientific facts, had to be made to fit the theory. Now that is zealotry, it is ideological zealotry, it is totalitarian in its attitude. The fact is, I'm afraid to say, and you may find this a little hard to understand and to take, because certainly the BBC isn't telling you this, but there is no evidence for global warming. That is to say, there is no evidence. Wait, please. I know that you are an audience of open minds who already showed it so this evening.
Melanie Phillips, come to the point and get on with it, would you please? Because then we can have other people involved in the discussion.
Let me tell you that the seas are not rising any more than is in any way out of the ordinary. The ice is not decreasing, it is increasing. The polar bears are increasing in number, and the temperature is going down, not up. Right. There is no evidence for this whatsoever.
Except in this studio.
Unfortunately, the debate is not over.
One of the great dark places in the world is the shadow cast between the people and the truth. The media is like, they're actively brain blocking people's pursuit of necessary truths. It is a giant propaganda war. It's not conscious. I mean, it's the natural result of our selected lefty nonsense. But of course, the left always accusing the right of being anti-science because, I don't know, they're skeptical of global warming. It's like, I don't know, what's more proven? Racial, biological differences or computer models of what the weather's going to be like in 50 years? Ha! I wonder which one might be just a little bit more scientifically proven and valid.
They're going to capitalise on it, and it's very worrying.
Melanie Phillips.
Well, in answer to the question, UKIP are a danger to the Tories because of the danger that they will split the Tory vote. But, you know, Mr Cameron has made a tremendous rod for his own back because he scorned UKIP as a party of, closet racists, loonies and fruitcakes, rather like we've been hearing from members of the audience this evening. And the problem is that since very, very large numbers of people who always used to vote Conservative have the same kind of views about immigration, about the EU, about human rights, about traditional values of one kind or another, Mr. Cameron basically insulted his own core vote. He insulted the vast majority of Conservatives. And as a result, Conservatives have felt for years, true Conservatives have felt for years, first of all, totally disenfranchised because their so-called Conservative Party had actually decided it had to become left-wing in order to gain power. And not only did they become disenfranchised, but they became subjected to the kind of insults that we've heard from members of the audience, in which people who have a perfectly reasonable point of view that while immigrants are going to add greatly to the value of the nation, there has got to be a limit. You cannot have everyone coming in. That there are genuinely profound reasons why British people might want to retain democratic control over their government rather than cede it to the EU. These are legitimate points of view. You may disagree. You are welcome to disagree. But to call people scaremongering, racists, disgusting, this is why it is this vilification of the point of view of ordinary decent people in their millions, which is what Mr. Cameron has managed to achieve. He's managed to tell his core constituency, I don't want you on board because I think you are disgusting. You backwoodsmen, you Conservatives. I'm going to turn this into not the Conservative Party. And look where it's got him, and it serves him right.
Thank you very much. So let's go to a question from Lynn O'Donoghue, please. Yes, O'Donoghue.
Is Britain really overcrowded?
Very simple question. Is Britain really overcrowded? And in the light of a report today saying it absolutely wasn't, we needed lots more immigration, which came from the Office for Budget Responsibility. Nigel Farage.
It's interesting, the chap that produced that report today was the same chap who in 2008 said that the upcoming recession would be minute. So he hasn't got a very good track record. Look, if you fly into Gatwick, you'll see lots of green spaces. That is certainly true. However, if you have a country in which the population goes up as a direct result of immigration, what you find is not a shortage of green fields, if that's being wanted to build houses. You find a shortage of primary school places. You find a shortage of GP surgeries. You know, we have fewer GPs per head than any other country in Europe today. You find congestion, whether it's on the roads or the London Underground or wherever you go. And what you find is that actually you're constantly playing catch up, and really the general quality of life for the massive population has gone down. So I think those comments today were wholly irresponsible. And what we've seen, I mean, it's quite interesting to think that in 1990 the population of this country was 55 million. It is now between 62 and 63 million. That is a massive, massive increase. And I think ordinary folk going about their lives are feeling it. And I think having a proper immigration policy, controlling the numbers, doing what nearly 200 countries in the world do, namely controlling the numbers that come, the type of people that come, is the answer.
Right. Russell Brand.
I sometimes feel worried about you, Nigel Farage. The reason I feel worried is because I know a lot of people are frightened in our country. I know a lot of people are feeling afraid and frustrated. And there is a sense that there is a corrupt group in our country using our resources, taking away our jobs, taking away our housing, not paying taxes, exploiting us. And there is an economic elite that this man's party is funded by, that this man comes from the background working in the city. Let me tell you something, there was an economic crash and a lot of money was lost. His mates in the city farted, Nigel Farage is pointing at immigrants and the disabled and holding his nose.
Now, as I've said already, I spent 20 years working in business. I worked in the commodities business, the base metals, non-ferrous metals business. But the one day that really decided me that I was going to go into politics was a day in October 1990. And it was about 5:30. We were in the City of London, so that of course means we were discussing the day's trading in a pub, and somebody ran in with the news that Britain had just joined the exchange rate mechanism. We had just decided to peg our currency to the Deutschmark as a precursor to us joining what ultimately became the euro. And I won't tell you the initial words that I uttered. They were most certainly in Anglo-Saxon and not complimentary. I thought we'd learnt the lessons of the past. I thought we'd learnt that if you try and fuse together economies that are very different, not just in terms of economics, but in terms of culture, that it comes to a bad end. Well, we tried our experiment, and 2 years into our experiment with the exchange rate mechanism, we had interest rates at double what they should have been. We had a year in 1992 of record business bankruptcies, of record house repossessions, and we'd put an extra 1 million British people on the unemployment register directly as a result of our career politicians' obsession with tying us in as tightly as possible to this European club.
Immigrants are not causing the economic problems and suffering we're experiencing.
And now the EFD and Mr Farage.
Well, Mr Barroso, not just you, but the entire unelected government of Europe, and a chance perhaps for our citizens to reflect on where the real power lies in this union. I've listened to you for nearly 10 years. Full marks for consistency. You know, you're a man that likes fixed ideology. You probably picked it up when you were a communist or Maoist or whatever you were. And for the last 10 years you've pursued Euro-federalism combined with an increasing green obsession. And yeah, it's been good. For bureaucrats, for big businessmen, for landowners, it's not been a bad decade. But it's been a disaster for poor people, unemployed people and those on low wages. The euro, which you believed would give us monetary stability, has done the very opposite. It was a misconstruction from the start, and it's pretty clear that youth unemployment at nearly 50% across the Mediterranean is probably nearly double what it would have been as a direct result of the misconstruction that is the euro. They're in the wrong currency, but I know that you'll never ever admit to that, and the euro, I think, will die a very slow and painful death. But you're all in denial about that. But that I find really more interesting. You keep telling us that climate change is an absolute top priority, and you've been greeted with almost hysteria in this place over the last 10 years. Well, those of us that have been sceptical about this have been mocked, derided, called deniers. We've argued from the start that the science wasn't settled, and we've argued very strongly that the measures we're taking to combat what may or may not be a problem are damaging our citizens, and we've been proved to be right. Tens of millions forced into fuel poverty, manufacturing industry being driven away because, of course, our competitors in China and in America are going for cheap fossil alternatives, and of course wind turbines blighting the landscapes and seascapes of Europe. And still today you go on about green growth. Well, the consensus is breaking behind you. You know, Commissioner Tajani the other day said that actually we face a systematic industrial massacre. It is time to stop this stupidity and to help you. There's the NASA photograph last August of the ice cap, the northern ice caps. And there is the NASA photograph this year of the ice caps. It is increased by 60% in 1 year. Leading American scientists are now saying we are going into a period of between 15 and 30 years of global cooling. We may have made one of the biggest, stupidest collective mistakes in history by getting so worried about global warming. You can reverse this in the next 7 or 8 months. You can bring down people's taxes. If you don't, they'll vote on it in the European elections of next year.
Mr Farage shows that populists are sometimes obscurantists. 99% of the science, Mr. Farage, believes that this climate change exists as a result of human activity. 99% of scientists. Of course, there are always people that are paid to say the opposite. But to pretend, as you pretend, that against all science, well-established science, that the problem of climate change is just an invention of the Greens or of the left, it's completely nonsense. Of course we have to find a way. Of course we have to find a sensible way to fight climate change. We have to look at the same time for competitiveness in Europe. We have to make this part of our agenda for growth, and I believe that the green economy brings many possibilities. Mr. Callanan, you said, making a joke about possible competitors for the Commission election, that you are not interested in that job, that you are very happy with yours. Let me tell you very frankly that I think even if you were interested, you could not have a chance to be elected for President of the Commission. And you know why? I'm not saying that happily, because I think increasingly your party and your group is looking like the UKIP and the Eurosceptic anti-European group. And I start to have some doubts that you are going to be elected yourself in Britain if it's not UKIP that is going to be the first force in the British elections. Because when it comes to be against Europe, the people prefer, between the original and the copy, they prefer the original. That's probably why they are going to vote more for Mr. Farage than for Mr. Callanan. And this I don't say with any kind of satisfaction. Because if those forces that are pro-European, or even those that are not really pro-European but constructive, have the same speech, the same political attitude of the anti-Europeans, the Eurosceptics, the populists, in that case, they will win next election. So my appeal to you is to make the case for Europe.
Now, for the EFD, Mr. Farage, please, you have the floor.
Well, next year's European elections will not be contested on the old division lines of left and right, and several group leaders have agreed with that today. Frankly, that's all irrelevant. It will be contested between those of us that believe in national democracy within the nation state, and those that believe that the 28 countries that are part of the EU are better governed by these institutions. That, in a sense, is what this comes down to. But, Mr. Barroso, those of us that believe in national democracy do not want to take us back to the Western Front or 1914. Those of us that believe in national democracy will say to you it is a healthy assertion of identity, but it also shows a deeper understanding of why the problems of Europe were caused in the past. It is democratic nation states in Europe that are stable, that will not go to war with each other. And I'd remind people, without the vote in the House of Commons 2 weeks ago, we would now be at war in Syria. What better proof can there be that nation state democracy can be a force for good?
I think that the next election shall not be a big fight between the left and the right. I like that. Certainly when you're in the centre, you have all the problems on your head.
As much as any of us, I enjoy seeing Nigel Farage in a boozer with a pint and a fag, laughing off his latest scandals about breastfeeding or whatever. I enjoy it. But this man is not a cartoon character. He ain't Del Boy. He ain't Arthur Daly. He is a pound shop Enoch Powell, and we got to watch him.
Well, Russell, that's all well and good, and you've got your point of view. The question was, is Britain overcrowded? And do you think I'm wrong? I mean, do you not think?
Nigel, can I not be more clear, mate? I think you're wrong. I come from the kind of community...
This is called Question Time, this programme, right? And
well, tonight you could have another name.
And what happens is, members of the audience ask questions, and we're expected to answer them. You haven't answered this lady's question. Do you think Britain's overcrowded and there is a strain on public resources and people's quality of life?
We need more money for public resources.
Well, where's it going to come from?
It's not overcrowded. It's going to come... I'm so glad you asked, mate. Since the financial crash Banker bonuses have exceeded £80 billion. George Osborne, your Chancellor, campaigned to stop caps being placed on banker bonuses. At the same time, there were austerity cuts against the poorest among us, the disabled, people that we need to be looking after. We need to close tax loopholes which are exploited by big corporations. There's money. I've got money now. I've seen rich people. There's plenty of money out there. It's just not being distributed.
Okay. Yes.
And I don't like people preaching that I am any part responsible for anything. I've never heard him criticised the disabled.
I never have.
Okay? Never. Okay? And you are a campaigner, yeah? I'm going to go back to the last question. Please let me finish.
Mate.
Stand. Stand for Parliament. If you're going to campaign, then stand. Okay? Okay, you have the media profile for it. Do it.
My problem would be, mate, I'd stand for Parliament, but I'd be scared that I'd become one of them. I know what side of the argument...
No, I'm sorry. You've fought addiction. You've fought addiction and you've beaten it, okay? You can't preach that. That is rubbish.
Mate,
you cannot preach that.
I'm not preaching.
You are. You've attacked him, okay? Yeah. Okay? And you've attacked him, and you've attacked everybody that stands for his party.
I do.
I do.
We're trying.
I'm sorry.
I'm not attacking people
they are people on the street.
A philosopher or a thinker, a moralist, is sort of in the position of a 17th century doctor when confronted with a fever. You know, we think we have these antibiotics, you know, we have this reason and evidence, and we talk to people and bring the facts to bear and have an honest conversation and so on. And you think you're speaking to someone rational, and they just begin screaming and throwing things at you and refusing to engage in a rational discussion. And they've been programmed and propagandized into simply rejecting reason and evidence like all good religious adherents. They simply rail against and reject any reason and evidence that goes against their particular prejudice. They are the bigots, right? They claim about racism and bigotry. They are the bigots because they won't listen to reason and evidence, and they scream at anyone who brings reason and evidence to bear on the topic.
Oh, are they? Rubbish. I'm sorry, but at the end of the day, it's the general public that are standing for him.
Trying to blame immigrants for the cutbacks because of his rich.
Russell, you've got some voters here, mate. You ought to stand. I mean, these are your voters. They're lovely people, aren't they? They're lovely people.
And you know, it is a depressing thing to see that when you have some understanding of social movements, that when the mob is in the grip of a hysteria, for which there are rewards for following the mob and punishments for deviating from the mob, the vast majority of people just flow into the Borg brain and just go with like leaves on a stream. They just flow wherever the mob takes them.
Just hear for a voice up here. You, sir, on the gangway.
Behave yourself over
there.
The point I want to make to Russell is that you say you claim to sort of stand up for the working classes, but you've got to understand that it's the working classes that have been hit the hardest by immigration, mass immigration. You know, wage compression, the change in communities over a short period of time has led to, tension within communities. You've got to appreciate that actually, it's all right to say, criticising UKIP and Nigel Farage, but actually it's the people at the bottom of society that have been hit the hardest by immigration.
I'm telling you, mate, honestly, I come from the same community as you come from. I've been very lucky and I've had a few breaks and I've got a few quid now. And I'm telling you that immigration has always been happening. What happened in 2008 was very unique. It's the scale. My friend, I swear to you, if I thought, listen, try this, for 2 years, turn your focus to corruption in the city, turn your focus to apathetic politicians, turn yourself to the corruptions going on there, and if in 2 years' time your life ain't got better, campaigning against the people that have wealth and power, not those that have very little, if it's still the same, I'll come with you and campaign. But I'm telling you, I know where the power is, I know where the money is, I know what we've got to do.
Right. Camilla Cavendish. Camilla.
And when I was younger, I thought, I have the antibiotics to help with the fever. I don't just have to sit there like I'm in some Jane Austen novel, apply cold compresses, hold someone's hand and pray that they get better, and what we have to do mostly is we have to simply let the disease run its course and cross our fingers. Because it seems that culture as a whole in the West has moved so far beyond the strictures and limitations and humanization of reason and evidence. The culture has moved so far away from that even if you have a cure for the disease, nobody even thinks that they're sick. And in fact, they think that when you call them sick and they have a disease and you have the cure, that you are the disease and you're trying to poison them. So we have been reduced to 17th century doctors when faced with a fever. That basically all we can say is there's nothing practical we can do other than sit and wait and hope.
So there we are. I think we learned a lot about Labour. We learned a lot about Ed Miliband. It's not a perfect interview, but personally I found it a very interesting experience. And I think it says a lot about Ed Miliband that he understands the way that media works now, the way that the country feels at the moment, the way that people feel.
But here it is, 10 o'clock, and we are saying the Conservatives are the largest party.
Well, Chief, don't quit your day job. Whatever that is.